decisions that are made in the United Nations, for example. You know, there might be an initiative which is offered for the world, but the powerful nations can say, no, we're not going to have that. And it doesn't serve a lot of the lower, the lesser nations for doing that.
Do you believe that energy? Do you believe that energy is coming to an end soon? I do. I think that energy is coming to a dividing point now, as more and more people are becoming educated, and as we said, from a numerological point of view, more and more people will be born with a sense of it's not about me anymore; it's about us. I think, see it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think there's no doubt that more and more people are becoming awakened. And look, that's thank you for your summary of that. It was very interesting, George. I must get hold of the book. Beautiful. I mean, it outlines the perfect world. The problem is, and someone should write a book about this, how do we implement it? Because one of the basic failures of human civilizations has been that the world leadership positions, the political posts always attract psychopaths and sociopaths and narcissists. That's one of the core issues. Now, you know, this outline of the perfect world is great. How do we put that into practice?
Can I answer that question?
Oh, please do.
Yes, okay. I covered some of that last week, and I used the example of information which comes from the Cryon entity. I don't know if you've heard of Cryon, but it appeared soon after the harmonic convergence of 1987. And the Cryon energy describes itself as the all that is energy. So it's God source energy, right? And it appears on this realm from time to time in order to help the progression of the race, right? And in the very first book which came out from Cryon, which was published in 1993, I think it was, it offered a solution for the energy on Earth, the energy crisis, which it's been termed for a long, long time. And it's very simple, right? You could power just about all the world's cities on hot rocks. In other words, you drill into the Earth, and if you drill far enough, you'll find incredible heat. And that heat versus the cooler temperatures up above can be used to generate almost endless power, right? And they would power most of the cities of the world. The other solution offered, because a lot of the cities of the Earth are close to the coast, and Melbourne's no exception, is tidal power, right? The hydropower that we were familiar with is a very mature technology, right? You look at the heads at Port Phillip Heads, just coming out of Port Phillip Bay in Melbourne. There's enough power there to power more than the state. You could possibly power a couple of the states of Australia just from the Port Phillip Heads using tidal power, a very mature technology, right? And the excess power can be used to create hydrogen, right? And the hydrogen can power all your transport, right? The hydrogen becomes a battery. So you could eliminate the use of oil and petrol, because petrol and oil, the small particulate fuels, are actually quite poisonous to our atmosphere and poisonous to the Earth. Why didn't we take that up? Probably because of greed and corruption. We had oil companies running the system, and the great innovations, some of the great innovations of the 1990s was the electric car, right? And that's another documentary I played more than 10 years ago, Who Killed the Electric Car? And it names all the guilty parties, right? There was no need to destroy that brilliant innovation, right? We're not saying the electric car was the best way to do things because it still needed a battery, whereas hydrogen is portable, just like petrol is, right? And the technology is very mature. We've had hydrogen powered systems for decades. We could all have been driving hydrogen cars right now. So what was suggested in the text I was reading is we have a very primitive system. We have a very primitive way of dealing with the world's issues, and that's why it's difficult to implement some of those things. That's your very question, right?
Well, my question. So what you've talked about the fact that the resources are there,
Yes.
But the point that I'm making is that any efficient, fair system of government always seems to be taken over by the oligarchs, the controllers. Unfortunately, those people that hunger for power, they seem to be more active and they take over. We need to have a system of government where the control or is equally distributed, but those that are in the administrative heads, have a philosophy and a spirituality which ensures that it is fair. And unfortunately, so far in the history of the world, we've had the narcissists and the selfish and the greedy take over. So that's a very important question. How do we ensure that the governing of the world is fairly done?
Could it be that? Could it be that the people, we're looking to government? Could it be that is our problem? Could it be that the reason that we are in this situation is because we're looking to government and we're not, possibly we're not governing ourselves, for example, we are, the way I see it, but I don't know anything, but it starts with me, and I grow a lot of my food, and therefore, like, I've just spent 5 hours in the garden today, and I don't really need to go to the gym or go to the doctors or rely on pharmaceutical or use my car. And I also am improving the soil and my direct environment. And so could it be that, we've become very lazy, which someone said in this Zoom, because of the supermarkets, the gyms and what have you are a direct correlation to supermarkets. If we were all working on our own, if we had to make our own food, it would eliminate so much. It would eliminate so much. It would eliminate all this need for gyms and work and traveling around. Like, you wouldn't want to travel around. Anyway, I do go on. So could it be that the people are looking for a government? What was there before government? What were we doing before government was invented?
Sorry, can I just chime in? I've got to go fairly soon, but Naomi, I think you've touched on the real core of the issue, and that is that we look back over the various governments of the history, and everything from communism to capitalism to socialism to kingdoms to whatever it is, all of them some have done reasonably well for a while, but eventually they fail because of human ego and for profit. As soon as we turn pharmaceuticals into for-profit or power for-profit, we know that Tesla showed us that he was going to give us free electricity, and then Edison and the rest of it basically ruined his career, and so that we're now paying unmistakable amounts of money to pay for electricity, when we know that I've seen patents of free electricity machines. Look, they're all over the place. The thing is now, the only way that we're going to, I believe, that we're going to save ourselves, given that the desperation for the diminishing food and energy and all the rest of it, is if there is a change of consciousness. I am told through my hypnotized clients that more and more of us are going to start to be being born or starting to awaken very soon with an increased sense of true brotherhood and sisterhood, where we no longer feel as individualized in our, as George was saying, in our big communities, our cities so large, but there is now on the very verge of a new frequency resonating around us or through us, where we start to feel greater empathy naturally, not forced, not studied, but a natural greater empathy with humans. And over the next 100 years, this will happen fairly soon, I'm told, in a wave type event. But then after that, 2 or 3 generations, as more and more kids get turned on with the pituitary and the pineal gland resonating at a far higher level, and so we won't need to tear down anything. Or the redundancy that George was talking about. I think it's just going to be a natural way of starting to empathize with nature. In the 4th interview, if you guys want to hear it, in the audios that I played in a presentation 3 or 4 weeks ago here with George, you'll hear about in the 4th one, which is the start of the 2nd part, you'll hear me talking to a hypnotized client that's come from another planet, and she's bringing, after the ascension, lots of her students here to teach us how to work with the consciousness of plants directly. And I've certainly done that a few times. That's not the only time. I've had other, under hypnosis, people coming from other dimensions and planets that are sharing about why so many of us on the earth. Well, that's because everybody wants to be on the earth during the ascension. And after the ascension, the population will diminish anyway, because a lot of old souls won't need to be here anymore. They'll move on to other planets, other places, in other dimensions. Once God's created us, we never stop being created. So, I just see lives as waves and waves. And when you do what I do for a living, you start to realize we've got to get ourselves out of the fishbowl. It's all very good to philosophize like Finding Nemo about what an ocean is from inside a fish tank. But if you can't move beyond the glass barriers, you're always erroneously thinking. You're thinking like, even if you're the cleverest fish there is, but if you don't move beyond your glass barrier. So it's when we go into super consciousness under hypnosis that I find that a lot of my clients start to talk about all of this, as all of these arguments as just being part of the energy of just about yesterday, that we're heading into a time now when these discussions won't be only reserved for Zoom enthusiasts like us, but more and more, I think my own children are already showing that. They've just got a greater sense of fair play, and they just want to share more. And they're talking amongst each other. And so I actually pretty optimistic. I'm not optimistic about the system as it was. I think it's going to be replaced by a better system, and it's going to be led from the consciousness of people just saying no more for profit being the fundamental way that we distribute things.
Well, it's a very positive, inspiring view of the world. So basically you're saying that it's going to happen naturally, and we don't actually have to step in and organize, that the light workers don't have to organize themselves and overthrow the despots, that it's just going to happen naturally. It's,
if you have a look at, if I may, I've got to go fairly soon, but I don't know if you listen to it, but on George's site there,
yeah,
on the part A and part B, it's a fairly long presentation, but I did it on purpose. I really wanted to put a lot of evidence. I played 6 different audios.
What's it called?
From
that's the Messages Beyond Time and Space. That's on our YouTube channel.
It's just below this one.
Yeah.
And if you go to part A, you can put out George and we probably occupy the first 30 minutes. I think the audio started about 35, 40 minutes, and there's 6 of them all together. Have a listen to them. And I've put things from 2011 right up to clients of only 3 months ago.
And did you say you hypnotize clients and what, their higher self talks, or?
Yeah. And you'll hear it very obviously.
Wow, that's
if you listen to the part at the beginning before I start the audio, I'll explain that in some detail. It goes about 20 minutes, a bit of a drone. But if you're interested in the process itself, I do present that in the first 20 minutes. And then I play 6 audios where you hear the hypnotized clients all talking about change of consciousness and other dimensions, other planets and various other things. I could play many more, but I only had, even as it was, I pushed George's. You'll notice George falls asleep during audio 4 or 5 or 6.
That sounds really interesting. Can I ask you, the event that everyone's talking about, is everyone, does everyone believe that this is going to be a solar flare that's just basically going to sort of raise our DNA up?
Some people certainly do. And the answer I'm getting from the other side, when I had a conversation recently about certain things, they said, look, there are going to be certain things that are going to happen, part and parcel of all this, that none of you know. We've deliberately hidden it from you because, unfortunately, the more information we give you about the future, the more you start to dream about possibilities that from your 3-dimensional brain you can't conceive of, and you'll only misunderstand them. And so therefore, as is always the way, whenever a major change is going to happen on Earth, they tend to introduce it as a shock. But we've been pre-trained for that shock. So that under hypnosis, and you'll hear this if you listen to the 6 audios, and that's just 6. I've got dozens and dozens just talking about Earth changes and many other things. You'll actually hear that under superconscious state, they're very matter of fact. It's not umming and ahhing and I think and I thought. No, you'll hear they're very, very authoritative about things. So once we slow the brain down to about delta, which is about 4, 5, 6 cycles, then the brain, for all intents and purposes, is now asleep. And yet you'll hear that the conversations are alert and more aware, more conscious than we normally are if we're just in ego mode. So and some of the, and I've edited it down dramatically. I only got 2 hours into there, and that's already pretty bloody long. But have a look at it. I think you might find some interesting stuff.
That sounds really, really interesting. I mean, it's
audio 4 is about. Sorry.
I always feel a little bit sort of irritated that the higher Galactic Federation or whoever it is doesn't want to tell us exactly what's going to happen. And I must say, initially I was, many years ago, I was more of a survivalist and really worried about various events that were going to happen. Now, knowing that, events that some people are concerned about, like solar flares, may in fact be quite a spiritual event, I actually see everything from a different context. So I think knowing a little bit about what's going to happen and what might happen is actually a good thing. I'm still not sure with a solar flare whether you got to actually had to run and hide and go underground or not, because I mean, too much of a good thing. I mean, looking at God's face can actually melt you, so you might need a bit of shielding. So.
Well, something that
I looked at the face of God and I melted. I understand that you got to understand that our very cellular makeup is changing as these higher frequencies are coming. That's why we're all being led to eat less food. We will be eating a lot less food there, and what the conversation you hear with audio 4 is about this lady who's coming from another planet where they work symbiotically with plants, and after the ascension, many of those souls will come to the earth to teach us how to work with plants at a conscious level. And again, I would never share these if I only got one of it. I've had quite a few different recordings over the years of clients that have come from planets or dimensions where they work symbiotically. For instance, a lot of people get very knee-jerk reaction about modified foods, but I had one client who was in another planet before he came to the Earth about 5 lifetimes ago to prepare to come onto the Earth, to stack the deck with really old souls, so that this ascension event can happen. So because many of us will be able to resonate at this higher frequency. And he was telling me how he works in laboratories in this other planet with the consciousness of plants. The consciousness of the plants is more advanced, and the consciousness of the entities are able to work symbiotically. And as a professor, he works with grafting and modifying the plants according to their own ideas. Why don't you try grafting me to this or the other? Or why don't you try trying this, that, and the other? Because plants think it's such a slower but longer frame of thought mind. When you start to talk to people about how plants talk, they said, well, nowhere near as fast as you are, you know. And they conceptualize in such a different way that we have to rethink. Well, can't even rethink. It's not thinking. That's the point. We overthink things. We over-intellectualize. And in this new Earth, we won't be over-intellectualizing at all. We'll be going more in wavelengths that are flowing with eternal life. Eternal life. We will not have fear anymore.
Well, that's
And
really,
so
really good news. So we don't have to be worried about being vaccinated and herded into special smart cities and the New World Order controlling us. It sounds like future's looking pretty rosy. That's great.
it is.
We might have to make some changes to avoid those scenarios. You know, if we stay on an indulgent path, then some of those things might have to happen, and it won't be pleasant.
Well, I'm thinking it sounds like there's going to be multiple timelines, and
Yeah, there are two major timelines. The good news is, from what I'm getting, and this is very recent information, even when you hear the 6th one, you'll hear an actual date given. Since then, even greater news has come through. In the last couple of weeks, I've been getting some remarkably great news from the other side, and they're thanking us, and they're saying, look, you don't know how big a bullet you've missed. Because you'll hear when I was doing this back in 2004, 2005, when I was asking guides on the other side, what's the chance of the ascension? I was getting a 50-50, and it's going to be some major upheavals on the earth. But in this year in particular, it started with that April global meditation, which just at the beginning of the pandemic, I know that I sent out, one of the first times in my career, I sent out emails to just about all my old clients, which I've never done, about this planetary global meditation. It came through one of my clients who said, look, get your clients onto this. It's time to activate. Because I usually don't stand up and talk much all that about these things. I do a few things with George, but that's it. But I was told this case, get this information. And I got so many old clients say, yeah, we'll be there. And I get my brothers and sisters. I heard later on, Christ consciousness came through one of my clients and said to me, we are absolutely excited about what happened that day. Around the planet, there was something like 500 million people praying, whether they were Christians or Mohammedans or whatever, or agnostics or not, but just manifesting, visualizing, meditating together and saying, we want a better distribution system, whatever they wanted. It was basically about lifting the frequency from fear and loathing and competition to love and sharing and betterment. And he said that we've released a lot of negative karma. The third dimensional thing must balance, of course, and so all the negative karma over the last couple of thousand years is coming out. We see volcanoes and everything happening, but at the same time, with more and more of us having conversations like this and going out and hugging our kids and say, bless your food before you eat it, and say hello to the next door neighbor, and when you're at the checkout chick, say hello to you, thank you for doing my best. So we start to share love and empathy. Then we take people away from that competitive, it's all broken shit. I'm getting cold now just hearing everybody complaining about, you know, how wrong the government is here, and everybody's talking about individuality, but nobody's talking about the greater good. And I understand that. That's what I said before about the numerological point of view. From a number one, we're moving from that thing of I have the right to more and more we must understand that as we move into this new, you know, I voluntarily give up my services for the group. And if you watch my back, I'll watch yours, and everybody's backs are watched. And so I don't have to stand up for me anymore. We stand up for one another. And if you know, socialist system, or it doesn't matter calling up freaking systems, we just will be brothers and sisters, and we will be able to grow enough food, whether it's on one farm or 100 farms. I'm not a systems guy.
Well, that was the point of the evening, is specifically about this one world government, new world order fear. It's something that needs not be feared, because it's going to do us some good in the short term until we can awaken properly and realize that we're all part of the same energy, and we could be all assisting each other rather than competing with each other and killing each other, things like that, you know.
George, I love how you always give the give a different context, which is not fear. That's so important to this. Look, I'd be very interested in joining any group meditations if you can share it. I've recently discovered, you know, Cobra.
Cobra.
Yeah. So Cobra has regular group meditations as well. He's an individual who he's a Pleiadian, and he has you can look him up. He has regular world mass meditations as well. But look, if you have know of any mass meditations as well, I'd be very interested in joining.
21st December 2012 at Uluru. 2020, sorry.
Yeah, right.
And you don't have to be there. I can find the link if you like.
Yep. That would be great. I think the more of this that we do, the better. Also, me and my husband David, we've always been planning to do catalyst groups, and it's something that I think we need probably about 6 members of people that are spiritual, where the idea is that we join our higher selves, join together to sort of catapult an orgasmic rise in consciousness of the planet. So we've been planning to have, we started off with about 4 people. We're not doing it anymore now, but anyone who's interested in joining us with catalyst groups, where here's David himself. So I think David explains the catalyst groups better than me. It's not just a meditation. We're still trying to work out the exact technology, the consciousness technology of this, but it's basically your higher selves join together to catapult this. Would that be right? Do you want to describe it a bit more? So if you're interested in forming we wanted to start forming these catalyst groups pretty quickly over the next few weeks.
I don't have the right person here to discuss it.
All right, but anyway, well, we might sort of put it out if you're interested, and especially if you've got some hypnosis experience, that would be very useful.
There's already quite a few groups doing that, and I'm happy to pitch in with yours too, because all around the world now groups, and of course small groups start to link in with other groups, and other groups are now. I got this beautiful vision in June, I think, one of my clients under hypnosis, and he sort of, obviously sometimes when I'm doing hypnosis, I go into quite a bit of a trance myself. And sometimes I can sort of peripherally see what they're seeing from the higher consciousness. And I got this vision of all around the earth when they were saying, congratulations on what you guys are doing. You don't know how great it is that so many people now, many more than not we anticipated, but the graph is going right over the edge at what we thought could be. And I got this beautiful vision of the earth from above. When you see satellite images of the lights of the earth, turned on at nighttime, you see all the cities, all the lights of all the various cities. And I saw like all these lights going on around the earth. And he said, they're not cities. They're all the light workers that are getting involved. And I saw that like each light was starting to network with the next light, and it's starting to create this net of consciousness
New grid
around the earth. And even though you might say, I only want 6 or 8 of us, but of course, during our meditations, I've done a few of these groups myself. Once you get enough people, once you've been doing it for 2 or 3 months, it starts to build up its own energy. And then you start to link in with the guides and say, I would like to link in with anyone else that's on a similar wavelength. And what we want to do is fairer distribution or better medicine or whatever the heck we want to do. If it's basically about brotherhood and sisterhood, we want to link up with consciousnesses on that level. And then we start to, and that's what I was being shown that day, that I just see this net of people all around the earth, all linking up increasingly. And I actually had this beautiful dream of renting the MCG and getting all the light workers down there one day and doing a creative toning of, you can imagine an amphitheater. We had 30, 40,000 people there, all going, doing the creative sound of, the tone we could hit would be fantastic. And Uluru, 20th of December 2020.
21st.
21st, is it? So a lot all around the planet.
Put the links on the chat screen. If you click them before we shut it down.
You described all that really well there. That's something that my guide had come up with, my primary guide, about 15 years ago, I think. But I'm glad to hear that it's actually happening. I mean, this is probably better than I could have imagined. I guess, I guess not all of us.
You're not alone. You're not alone. Listen, I honestly have listened to those 2 things that we did, George and I, a few weeks ago. If it resonates with you, contact. I'll be happy to do something and have a look at. But I've put a lot of stuff in those 6 audios, and I've got a lot more as well. And George might have me on one every so often. But look, things are very imminent. I think that these conversations in 2 months will already be redundant.
I mean, I thought, this was a novel idea quite a while back. I heard you mention super consciousness, and I go, well, this catches on fast. In fact, you're talking about it all linking up already. I'm like, well, that's great. I mean, let's do it, because this is the thing that's going to work. We're not going to come in here and overthrow the 1%. And we've been doing this throughout history. I mean, this was the only practical solution, because the problem can't be solved at the level of the problem. You have to come out of the problem in order to, we can't do it at this level. We've done it over and over and again. Talk about hypnosis. So I studied clinical hypnosis over 6 weeks, I think, in New Hampshire, and ended up studying past life regression and mediumship on top of that, and unknowingly opened the door. And now I've got 200 plus past lives with me, including the one I just mentioned. So
David, if I may then, that's exactly what I do. I studied in the US with Michael Newton and Brian Wise and Dolores Cannon. I'm accredited by all 3. And I've been doing this work for 20 years. So I'll just share, seeing that you've touched upon a really interesting point. I shared this with George the other day, but, seeing that you brought it up. In the last week's session, I had one, as I shared with George, one of the phenomenons that's really happened over the last few years, David, is that when I first started doing regression therapy way back in 2000, I did a 2-year course in hypnosis, and then went to the US and so I've been doing it for over 20 years. But when I first started, I found that the vast majority of my clients were advanced beginners to intermediate souls, and I get a sprinkling of very advanced souls. And when I had them, of course, I really sat upright and listened, because they usually taught me more than I helped them with, and they still had to pay me money for it. I'm being a bit cynical here, but that was how I was making my living. But I learned a shitload. But what's happened is that I was working in Europe last year, and then I got told come home to Australia, that it's all happening, and it's time for you to go home. And as soon as I got back here, I noticed that the clients all this year, I'm not getting any young, not even I'm only getting advanced intermediates to advanced souls now. The change in the people coming through my door is clear, is very, very clear to me. When I do their numerology, when I put them under hypnosis, get into super consciousness, the way that they're talking and discussing things is at a 300-400, I don't, you know, just make it much, much higher. So to get to the point, you'll hear, if you listen to those audios, that the recording, the last one audio, actually gives a date in December about the change of consciousness. Since then, I've had it clarified that December, January, or February, because as the Christ consciousness said to me, you can't tell me when a blossom tree is going to blossom. There's too many variants, but we're in the season. We're right on a whole big major change in consciousness. And that's why I'm saying that all these discussions about how we're going to fix a system that's so broken that really it's, you know, is a bit redundant, but a blossoming will happen, and many, many people will be ascending in consciousness with Gaia. It's not just us. Gaia is also going up. So it's going to be a symbiotic thing, right? And so what I got just last week was, see, I've just got to go back into it just a bit. Just give me 11 minutes just to take a breath. What it's about is that it was made very clear during this conversation that those of us who do bother to now take time to be brothers and sisters, discuss potentials for tomorrow, is that the time really of talking about what's broken with the system is over. The more we focus on how the pandemic or the wearing of masks or whatever the fuck is not right, we keep on going down into the competitive fear, negative frequencies, and that's what we attract to ourselves. But the time of asking our guides what we should be doing is over. We are now getting to a collective consciousness now, an evolutionary point now, where we are rising above that. Some won't, but many will, the majority will. And the simple difference between it is that if ever I notice that the habit of thinking negatively, even if I think it's for the greater good, but I'm thinking about what's wrong with this and how unfair it is there and whatever, that my fascination in that frequency brings me down and attracts that side of frequency to me. We start to understand truly we are divine. And whatever I put my mind into is the dimension and the frequency I'll frequentize at, and I'll attract that to me. So it is really important, I said, we're sending such high vibrations to you right now that if you start to lock into it, you'll be getting moments of bliss out of nowhere. Look for it. And instead of thinking to yourself, oh, don't worry, that'll pass, I'll go back to my old way, that's wrong. That's the point. That's the new consciousness we're going to be all living in first. And it's imperative the light workers hold on to it first. That we start to realize that all of a sudden, and I shared this with George the other day, I had a talk with him, we got together a couple of days ago, and that very afternoon, only 1 or 2 days after this client had told me this, I was in my kitchen making myself a cup of tea, looking outside, and I felt really great. I had no reason to feel good, but I felt as I was looking out in my garden, I just, nothing's wrong,
Well, I'd like to say what Naomi was sharing earlier really resonated. She's got a wonderful garden in Baronia, of all places. And I saw the photos last night. And the meeting that we both attended last night, it was going along that fix-it world type situation. And when I took the convener aside afterwards, I said to him, Well, what about the solution of turning the other cheek? And I'm not sure how well that went down. I also offered that, of course, if you're being abused, you need to speak to the abuser and say, well, that's not acceptable, and actually put a stop to it at some level. But turn the other cheek is another way to look at those sort of things, and look at the way Gandhi managed to get back his country. But anyway.
So I'm going to love you and leave you because I haven't eaten any dinner yet, and I've still got to go and get a couple of things. But look for bliss now. Use deep breathing techniques just to dissociate yourself, and it's going to be increasingly easy to dissociate from negativity. That's the point. Is the old mindsets? They're all habits. And as soon as you realize that the habit of my mind is going into listening to the news or what, and I've got no problem with being informed. Ignorance is not a force. To be informed is an important thing, but not attaching yourself to that, just observing it from a higher point of mind. And so whenever we feel ourselves all of a sudden aggrieved, and that often happens in traffic, or something else like that, now that the traffic is hitting the roads of Melbourne again, and all the rest, whenever you start to see that your old self is coming up, Nino's such a fucking idiot, or the government over there really should be, or the Americans are completely lost, or whatever they think, and so, whoa, and just notice that's the old me. Well done for noticing. Well done, Nino. Well done, higher self. And what would I like to say? God bless America. God bless that person who, and I wish you all well. And I'm feeling really good at the moment. And because their problem, I'm feeling great. I have abundance around me. And what more do I want?
We're rising up out of this. Why would we want to? We're going home. I know so many. I've met so many. I mean, I know you'll appreciate this because you're a past life regressionist, and I took that training as well. And the result was, and I think George has heard this, and Christine. So my psychic structure is such that I don't know how to explain this actually. So
just keep one word at a time, and you'll get there.
So I am multiples. I am a collective. I have about 200 personalities. I was in paper mode before. It took quite a while to get this to work well, this organizational system, because there's many, and we've got a primary personality speaking. But this is how I exist. And this is the way you're describing. We all actually exist. Most people just don't realize it. And this is the way we will exist.
Well, the way, that's right. The end of duality. Yes.
David, you'll be relieved to know, David, that you're not unique. I have quite a number of clients, as I said, especially the last 2 or 3 years. The amount of people who come in and says, we, the collective.
Really?
They've got an ego, but under hypnosis, who do you represent? Oh, there's quite a few of us here. And sometimes I even had one hilarious one last year that said, well, who you are, we represent this knowledge or that particular thing will really come into play after the ascension. But we sent 2 people into body to represent, certain of us.
That's and that's different.
And I remembered her ego actually kicked in, and he says, yeah, I drew the short straw. My ego, one of the 30 or 40, drew the straw. It was my turn to go to the planet. Why you don't want to come? No, the Earth is so damn difficult. It's so slow.
Yeah.
He said, but I had to go down. So she was actually crying when she first got into her group consciousness again. For the first 30 minutes, I was put on standby. I'm going home. And she was going back to her home planet. And she just needed to be in that energy again, just to feel the reconnection. And she brought that connection into her cellular makeup now. And the time was right. So that she was crying and said, oh my God, I've forgotten how beautiful my planet is. How beautiful and symbiotic everything is. And that's what we're bringing to the earth. And I can do this. She was talking to herself. I can do this now that I've had this restoration. And then she was told, you're one of many of us. You drew the short straw. You didn't want to go, but you've done it. And you're going to be proud of yourself. You're doing a great job. So David, you're not alone, mate.
So I'm assuming then this is quite different from dissociative identity disorder. This is a group selves
this is like a convergence. It's not a split. We came together. The reason being, and you might want to tell others this, and you probably, I know you know this, but so I committed suicide prior to coming to Australia. I took cyanide, died.
Not really. That's on a different timeline.
Different timeline. I was like a new person when I came in, and they came in, we came in for this reason, we, whichever. Lana being a psychiatrist, no accident. Previous life was a comedian from England. He was also committed to, yep, he happened to have committed, he was a drunk.
Comedian to psychiatrist, I love it.
He committed suicide, and my previous life committed suicide in Australia. So where do you think I ended up, oddly enough?
Yeah, in Australia, yeah.
Right back where I started.
As a comic psychiatrist, I love this. I love this. A suicidal comic.
Well, there's a perfect match to the information that I've worked with way back in the 1980s. We are composed of multiple personalities. The higher self makes a selection for that incarnation. And that's why you hear, you can confirm this, Nino, perhaps, that when they speak of we rather than I. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you listen to the audios, you'll actually hear 2 or 3 of the clients going from I to we.
Wow.
Yeah. Hear it, David. I think it'll do you some good to listen to those 6 audios.
Definitely.
And
so interesting.
you know, it may be. Are you Melbourne based? Where are you?
I see.
Where do you live?
We used to live in Sydney. We now live in beautiful Bellingen, which is half an hour from Coffs.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I used to live in Byron Bay. Well, I was just going to say, you're the type of client that you should come and do some sessions, but you're too far away. So, but look, it sounds like you've got plenty of stuff to come forward. Let me just give you a very quick reading on what I'm getting from your guides. Okay. I was thinking that should he see me, and I was being told, yeah, it would be good if you were in Melbourne, but you don't need it. You needed to hear this. You needed to hear what I'm about to say. The awakening is upon you now, David. What we've been laughing about and what you already know that you know, it's exactly little groups like this where you come up with people like George and me and everybody that's listening and participating, that not only are you not strange, you're one of us, okay? That we identify with you and we thank you for coming to the earth and being frightened and confused and all the rest of it, whilst we had to go through the dumbed down side of it. And we're right on the verge of a whole new frequency change. That's why they said, share with your clients that the moments of bliss are already on you. So long as you get away from negative thoughts, anytime you find your mind in old systems, thank yourself. Say, well done, Nino, for noticing that I was cursing that kind person for cutting me off on the highway. What would you like to say? It says, I bless you. And as soon as you bless somebody, you lift your frequency, you move back up, and then you'll have more of these blissful moments. And it's hang on to them, because the more often you accept that blissful moment, the more you're able to refrequentize to that space whenever you're feeling a bit blue. I'm just saying I'm feeling a bit blue. I just had remember that moment I was in the kitchen making my tea the other day, and I looked outside and I said, my God, I feel great. And once you've been to a frequency, you can go back there of your own volition. And that's applicable to you, David. That's what I needed to share with you.
It's interesting. What's happening at the moment, I think, is all our higher selves are connecting. In fact, I had a very interesting experience today. We were meditating using HemiSync, Monroe Institute music that allows you to go into a deeper sort of theta or delta waves. And I managed to disattach from my ego and get into my higher self. And I connected with a friend of mine who's from South Africa, who's a spiritual healer. I connected with her higher self, my higher self with her higher self. That's not really happened before. And that's what we're wanting to do with catalyst groups. But I'm thinking more and more, this might represent what's about to happen. Each of us connects not with each other, but from up here.
Super beings.
It's frequency levels, just like radio frequencies that use our phone and all the rest of it. It's happening increasingly, and as you talking about it helps. Talking about it out loud puts it into the ego, because our soul already knows this. We've all been prepped for this life. This is not another life on earth.
No.
This is a very, very specific
Unusual.
time.
Oh,
There's
really?
a lot. We joked about this, George and I, recently about you know, the T-shirt moment. You know, I was on the earth for the ascension. All I got was this T-shirt. You know?
Before
But
all
jokes
this,
aside, I am told that a lot of us have come to the earth for this time, and it's been bewildering. And many have suicided.
I
Many didn't
died.
make
I
it.
had a life review and I went to the other
Right.
side and I woke up and it was long story. But at some point there was this group, I had a guided meditation at a spiritualist church and he said, you're going to go into a room and there'll be a door. And I found myself in a boardroom and in through the door came 12 identical men and big men and older men in business suits. And they said, we're the committee of 12. And this is really strange. And I've never heard of this. And they said, we've got a proposal for you. And that was in 2012 or something. And then it, you know, spiritual death. It's, you know, it was the strangest thing. And then it just kept going. The goddess, you know, the goddess. I mean,
If you had the spirit of 12, David, that was significant. You very rarely have 12 elders come to us. It's whenever we have 12, which is the maximum, they're making you understand that this is important.
Yeah, they said they had a proposal.
You're being given maximum attention and assistance. So it's big picture stuff.
Yeah, I didn't
Listen,
understand.
mate, I would suggest that if you come to Melbourne, come and do some hypnosis with me. And if not me, find somebody else close around, you know,
Can
around
you
Australia.
you can't do hypnosis over Zoom?
No, not at that level. Not at that level. No. You know very well that, yeah, you could, but it's not professional. It's better that you actually be in a room with somebody because, you know, there's many signals you have to read, which on a screen like this, you can't pick up. So, but anyway, look, I just wanted to say, I think you're on track anyway. I don't think you need this, but it would be helpful to your ego more than your soul.
Yeah, well, no, it's good news to know that this is not, you know, that there's actually something. I wasn't aware that of all these other groupings and connections that were taking place.
It sounds good. But look,
that's a
let's
good
connect.
message.
I'm going to put with George's permission, I'm going to put my my email address there. Have a look at the thing that George recorded a couple of weeks ago, and then there's also a follow-up question and answer that George has also put. If any of that resonates, write to me, and we'll talk about the subject matter. And we've been talking, George and I, about doing more information from. Because I used to work at George's, you see. George and I was working with George at Magpie House for quite a number of years. So we've done some presentations in the past, but this subject matter was the only time I've actually done very advanced stuff. So I'll put there my email address.
There's some of the videos there.
Right, yeah. And then if you write to me, I'll give you my mobile number as well. Yeah. And that's true. That's true of everybody, of course, on this site.
I'm sure I know George from a past life. Like you said, it's very hard to think in here. You get inside the body and inside the restrictions of the limitations. It's like brain fog. I mean, you just can't operate normally here. And I'm usually operating between two worlds anyhow. You know, I'm in two different environments, I guess, or states. And in this one, like you said, heavy. It's I know George, but yet step in here.
You'll be doing more teaching, David. I see you teaching a little bit more. You'll be really good at communicating with kids, because kids, of course, automatically have a sense of group consciousness anyway when they're young. But the phenomenon will be that in this new time, and we're not far away from it. Now, of course, initially, it won't be all of a sudden we're at the highest level. We're going to be at the beginning of this fourth dimension. It'll take at least 3 generations between the children of our children start to be born with pituitary and pineal glands already activated and telepathy activated and many high frequency fourth dimensional abilities, all the rest. So it'll be, you know, roughly 60, 80 years before the transition is, and then it'll still be progressive, you know, but you will be here, as many of us, as I said, the clients that are walking in, they're all being brought to be put into super consciousness to start to aware that all the things I thought was wrong with me is my gift, is actually, and it didn't make sense in the old paradigm, but in the new paradigm, you're going to be resonating. You're going to be, glowing in the dark.
Right. Oh, good. We have to go. Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much,
much.
George. For
Appreciate
that
it.
was a really insightful.
We were all supposed to be here.
I did
Yeah.
hear all
Yeah.
of it. I was in paperwork
Yeah, no,
mode.
that-
I'm going to go too, George.
All right.
Take
We'll
care.
speak
Keep in
again
touch.
soon.
Bye
Good
bye,
night,
everybody.
everyone.
Lovely to meet you. Bye bye,
Yeah, you
Naomi.
too.
Bye, Christine.
To catch
Bye,
up again.
bye, Tony.
Yeah.
Okay.